5 seconds of summer of magic. Want you back. Magic in the morning at 8:35. And let's see, it's a Tuesday morning, and that means Mike Barrett now, to my right, your left, has come into the studio. We're going to chat with Mike about good policies from Barrett Insurance Agency. Mike, good morning.
Hey, good morning. How are you?
I'm well. You know what I was going to do? I was going to throw it to you and have you come out of that song, say Magic 97.
A little flashback.
Little.
Yeah, or a long flashback.
That was a long time ago. But
a few
anyway.
moons ago, yeah.
Yeah, so we have some fun doing this, educating folks out there about insurance, whether it's for their home, their car, their business, rental properties. We've talked about that a good bit lately.
Yeah.
That's why we call it good policies, because the insurance industry, just like anything that grows, is changing.
Yeah,
So-
always, in bringing on new products or new innovative coverage components. It's just it's the nature of the business. So
All right, so let's talk about this, per your request, by the way. In order for somebody to insure property, okay, they can't just come down and see you, show you a couple of pictures, and say, all right, so how much is it going to cost to insure this?
Right.
It's not that easy, is it?
not necessarily. There's different ways of doing it. Not
Okay.
every insurance agent, such as or agency, such as mine, or my wife's and mine, I should be clear, does what we do. We will, before we write any property, good morning, whoever that was, we will go and look at every property prior to writing it. Not saying we won't quote it without seeing it. We will quote it without seeing it, but we're going to go and do a review of the property before we write it. Why do we do that? We want to make sure that the property is fully eligible for whatever method of coverage we're writing, whether it be a homeowner policy, a dwelling fire policy, a business owner's policy, or what have you. We want to make sure that the eligibility is there. The guidelines for each company that we're placing it with is being met. All right. And then the biggest reason why we do that is because companies reserve the right to inspect. They reserve the right, once you're on the books with them, once you have a policy with a specific company, they can say, we're going to send somebody out and inspect the property. It could be an exterior-only inspection. In many cases, it's an exterior and interior. So we're trying to head them off at the pass and say, look, we're coming through. We're going to try to identify anything that could be a hazard identified by the insurance company so that either you're prepared or well, we wouldn't write you if you really didn't meet it, or that you can make those corrections before the company comes.
All right, so I'm going to assume, as are probably some of our listeners out there, we're talking about things like, let's say we go inside of the property, we're talking about up-to-date outlets. We're talking about smoke and carbon monoxide detectors. We're talking about
Hardwired for
windows.
rental situations,
Right.
too. Yeah.
And more obvious things like, oh, maybe they're in a floodplain. Maybe they've got an older house and it's just a few feet from a brook or a river. These are the kind of things?
They're not looking for flood because they're not going to worry about something that they're not covering. So flood would be a separate policy, but they are going to be looking for what's the quality of the exterior of the property. So is it siding? Well, if it's a vinyl sided house, is all the siding in place? Is there any siding missing? Is there any soffit missing? If it's clapboard or wood, is there any area where it's showing deterioration because of lack of care? You know, deferred maintenance is probably one of the biggest issues for insurance. Looking for roof and things like that. They want to look at utilities. Make sure you don't have a fuse box, that you have a circuit breaker, because that's the big thing. No knob and tube. They want to see updated wiring. Wood stove being connected appropriately and set up, not sharing flues with other devices in the house. There's railings that are in place. Hazards that are protected. If you have a pool, that there's a fence around the pool, or above ground pool, that you have a retractable or lockable ladder to get you in there.
Or
What?
it's always there, and you always hear about it after the fact.
Oh.
The elusive trampoline.
Oh, I hate those things.
But anyways, I mean, these are things.
Yeah, but every company has different appetites. Every company has different guidelines, and it's always reserved. Now, I'm going to use my insurance companies that I represent as the example. I have one insurance company that doesn't really ever inspect a home. They won't inspect your home. That's not to say they never will. They still reserve that right, but they just don't. They inspect all other types of business that we write with them, such as businesses, commercial businesses, farming operations, and things of that nature. Other companies that we represent all reserve the right to at least do an exterior. Some want to do an interior. And if it's a rental situation and you own a building that you're renting to others, almost every carrier I have is going to want to do an interior exterior. So it's always going to be that's the option of the company. And, if you don't want them to inspect, it will just simply put your policy in jeopardy, and they'll most likely either cancel you if it's within the first 45 days of the policy, or they will non-renew you at the next renewal cycle. So there's a million things there to consider, and realize that companies want to know what they're insuring. If I'm going out and I'm renting a $500,000 house, I certainly don't blame the company for saying, look, I know you've gone out as the agent and done the preliminary field underwriting, identified the risks associated, wrote this property, and have it insured with us. But look, we have a $500,000 on the line just for the property, plus maybe another $500,000 to $1 million for liability. We would like to see it.
So then let me ask you this. And so the intensity of the inspection and the frequency of that inspection is not state mandated. It is something that the insurance companies themselves.
It's their own doing. And I'll tell you, some companies, we have one company that they will try to do an every 5-year inspection for farms. And it's a farm safety inspection is what they do. So it's just a nice courtesy. I mean, yes, it's a bit of an inconvenience for the farmers where maybe they're identifying things that need to be addressed, but they're also identifying hazards that could become a problem. But most other companies really only inspect once.
Well, it boils down to one thing. It's a phrase that I've learned from you and many have dealing with insurances. Everything is a risk.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, you go back to the trampoline. I mean, before I say this, there are companies that will write a trampoline. All right. For some reason, they have a comfort level with it. Not sure how or why, but they do. It's easier to see why companies wouldn't have a comfort level with it, because you go out and buy that $200 or $300 trampoline, and you're the coolest parent in the world. Granted, my son wants one. I can't get him one because my company won't allow it.
Those little exercise ones.
There's even a video on our Facebook page of him saying, "I want a trampoline." I'm like, But if somebody sustains a horrible injury, the company's the one with the checkbook open, not you, the company. And granted, if the company pays the maximum limits, then you're liable.
Right.
So it's scary. So these are things to consider. It's balancing the fun things and the cool things in life with the how do I best protect myself situation.
So when an insurance company does that on their discretion, obviously there's no charge for it, right?
No.
Okay. No. But if a homeowner were to say, hey, could you come inspect? Is there a fee for it?
I've never had anybody request it.
Well, just wondering, because somebody out there may have just learned something. So.
Right. That's a good question. I'm not aware of companies charging at all, but I'm also never had anybody request it. So now there are some excess or surplus companies out there that do include an inspection fee on all policies, and it's usually like $50 or $65, and that's a very unique niche type of insurance. It's not something that we'd be hitting on with everybody, but most companies just don't charge.
All right. So if somebody's got questions on insurance and inspection,
give us a call, 748-5224. You can visit Barrett Insurance on Portland Street in St. Johnsbury or via our website, thebarrettagency.com. Plus, we're on Google, Facebook, and YouTube as Barrett Insurance Agency.
All right. And, of course, here in the studios.
Every Tuesday when I don't have to wait for trains.
But you got to admit the crossings look great in
They
Lindenville.
look fantastic.
All right. There's our good policies with Mike. You have a great week, Mike.
You as well.
And we've got Moves Like Jagger from Maroon 5.